Well, we head back stateside for episode 57, and I'm really, really pleased to have another fellow alumni within the commentary space, not just in sim racing, but also IRL. This man is a proud Hoosier, and he's been to the Indianapolis 500, folks, for 2 decades in a row. Welcome to the show, DJ Clark. Buddy, how you doing? Good to see you. And, 2024, we're well underway, aren't we?
We are indeed, Alex. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a real treat to be here, and yeah, we're 2 months in at this point. Feels like it's been dragging on for the better part of a year, but the real life kicks up. The sim world's already up and going, and it's good stuff.
Well, I wanted to really sort of take you back to the first time you ever went to the Brickyard. I think it was back in '97, wasn't it, with your
Yes, it
family? And
was.
there was a bit of a story. So, if anyone wants to find out a little bit of the story, but DJ's going to tell you the whole thing. Um, I've had this happen to me before as well. I think you must have been quite young at the time, but it was like your parents had already bought the tickets. They were saying like, we're going to phone the school, we're going to say that you're sick, and then they went, come on, what seats are you sitting at? It really is, and that sort of got you bitten by the motorsport bug, didn't it, DJ?
Yeah, it did. I mean, motor racing has always been an integral part of my family. Growing up, we were 20 minutes from the speedway. My first memory actually is my dad coming into my room with tears in his eyes one Sunday morning, and it wasn't until I was in college that I put it together and I called him and I realized he was crying because that was Senna's death. That was May 1st, '94. I
Mm.
would have been about 3.5 years old at that point, and the trauma of seeing my dad crying just registered in my brain. But yeah, I mean, back to happy points. Brickyard weekend has always been a big, big weekend in my family. Not Brickyard, the running at the Brickyard, not the Brickyard
Yeah.
400. We're not a NASCAR family. But we are a little. We were, well, I was when I was a kid, but I was
Yeah.
a huge Jeff Gordon fan. But that's neither here nor there. But we had my dad's fraternity brothers would all come in to town, and so we'd have 20, 30 people at the house. All of that. It's always a big to do. And for those that don't know, 1997, it was a 2-day rain delay.
Mm.
Um, and what happened is that, all of my dad's friends had jobs and things like that, and they had to go home. And as you said, my parents said, well, we got the seats. He's in kindergarten. I was 6 years old at the time. My dad, I think probably the reaction of something was, you know, um, come on, what's he going to miss in school here? We're almost near the end of the year, anyways.
Yeah.
Called the office, said, yeah, DJ's sick. And the nurse literally said, BS, where are your seats? We know you're taking him to the race. And the further part of that story is that we got there, we were sat in the Northwest Vista. So that's the short shoot between 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And my mom loves to tell this story that there's a bunch of old timers, a bunch of the old diehard IndyCar fans that see this little 6-year-old bopping up to the seats, and you could kind of feel their disapproval of going, oh no, we're going to have this kid who's sitting here all day and needs to be played with and isn't going to be paying attention to the race. Well, green flag flies, there's a yellow flag within 10 laps or something. And I sit there and I turn to my dad and I'm like, Ari looks really good. His car looks planted, but so and so's really loose coming through the corner. He just doesn't have it. And all the old timers looked at my parents and went, huzzah, huzzah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's funny. Like say the first experience that I had. Now, when you said that you were just 3 when Ayrton Senna passed away, and I love the fact you've got a full scale replica helmet just behind you. You're not the only one that has one. I actually have one up in my bedroom, which has the actual 1994 Williams
Mm.
uh, layout. And the funny thing was, there's a little bit of a story behind this. This is a delayed birthday present. My dad managed to find a replica helmet, specialist. I think it was stateside. I can't remember where for the life of me. And he I remember going to mum and dad's, and they said, "Well, we got a present for you." And I was just like thinking, "Okay, well, what rabbit are they going to pull out the hat this time?" And so he says,
Yeah.
"Just look on the stairs," and I see this helmet bag, and instantly I start welling up. He goes, "No, no, no, go on, go on." And like, this is a guy who at that time was around 40, 41 years of age. I'm 46 now. And I walk over and I open it up and I just go, like, literally, I'm in floods of tears for 5 minutes. I've literally cried my eyeballs dry. And he said, put it on, perfect fit. And then I just went, that is not being worn ever again. I said,
Yep.
that is now part of my ongoing increasing collection of either motorsport memorabilia, where I've got two miniature 1/8 scale Bell helmets from the Rotax Grand Finals, provided by Bell in the Emirati nations. And those are three helmets that are part of my collection, along with three cars, which includes the scale model of Sebastian Vettel's car from Monza when he was running with Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton's 2021 car when he won his seventh world title at Istanbul Park, and then the car that Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo were racing a few years back with Red Bull. So there's always these little links that we all have, and we're all sort of
Mhm.
interconnected. I mean, I was a big Ayrton Senna fan. Um, who was your biggest sort of driver that you class as a hero when you were growing up, DJ?
Um, to me as a kid, it was Fittipaldi.
Mm.
When I was super young, Emerson, I couldn't pronounce his name. I called him Funny Guy. Um, but but Fittipaldi was the one that I really, really always looked up to and really, really adored. Um, I was a pretty big Mika Hakkinen fan in
Mm.
terms of Formula One. When I was coming of age in Formula One was the Schumacher Death Star Ferrari era.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Um, so anybody that could beat Michael, I was on board with. Because I was young and I remember my dad telling me, like, no, you need to appreciate what this team is doing. This is amazing.
Hmm.
And I didn't care. I just wanted somebody else to win.
True.
Um, but my big one, and I will put him up on my Mount Rushmore to this day, was Montoya. Coming from Champ Car, that was obviously where my family was heavily invested in. I got to see him race a couple of times, making the jump over to Formula One with Williams and McLaren, and having the tenacity. I remember watching him at Brazil, taking Schumi down into turn one, and all of the F1 world going, "Who is this guy? You don't do this to Schumacher." And Montoya going wheel to wheel with him and banging. I mean, it was great. But I have loved those drivers throughout history that drive to win,
Mm.
that it put it all on the line to win. Montoya, Paul Tracy, I always loved to watch, even though his off-track antics were a little bit too much for me at points.
Yep.
Senna, obviously being like that. Um, Verstappen, seeing him come into the sport now, it's that same will to win. Hamilton, putting it all on the line. Those are the drivers that I've always gravitated to.
Yeah, I think one that I would also gravitate to is the man who was last personally selected by Enzo Ferrari to race in Scuderia Il Leone, Nigel Mansell,
Yep.
1992 Formula One World Champion, and then became 1993 IndyCar Champion, but didn't win at the Indianapolis 500 for the
All
two
right.
years that he was at Stuart Haas Racing. Because I followed it, I was like,
Newman
Newman
Haas.
Haas. Sorry, thank you, Newman Haas. I always get that. I always get that mixed up when I say it. But the funny thing is that because Alain Prost won with Williams in '93, folks, um, Nigel was effectively reigning champion for 2 years from a technical standpoint because Prost, as
Yep.
soon as he got his fourth title, went, "That's it, I'm done, I'm out." Opened the door for Senna to go to Williams, and then Mansell came back. I think Bernie Eccleston was trying to pay him a good old lump sum thanks to Dennis's help, and they raced with the old T-tray McLaren, if anyone might
Yep.
remember, the little sort of like what I used to call it the snow shovel wing on the on the top of the airbox, which I think also Michael Andretti piloted at one point and didn't get on with it at all. I
No,
think
that was earlier, I think, for Michael. Michael was Senna's last teammate in McLaren in '93.
was he? Yeah.
Uh, yes, because Michael is the last American to stand on the podium in Formula One. And that was, I believe, Monza in '93, if I remember
Hmm.
correctly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
It's really good, but both of us are passionate historians about motorsport, and
Yeah.
we can actually correct each other without getting aggressive on that. And that's
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing. I mean, that's what I like about motorsport is that we all have like our own specialist subjects. Like, say, for instance, if people were to ask me, okay, who was the last, who was the last DTM champion from the United Kingdom? Well, Gary Paffett, 2018, when Mercedes decided to pull out of DTM and then go to Formula E. And how long did that last? Not long.
Hmm.
It's but I mean, apart from the motorsport side of things, I know that you're a bit of a theatre thespian as well in your own right. I think that's why us as commentators we love a bit of a flair with the dramatic, don't we?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that was my undergraduate degree. My girlfriend and I both were both big theater nerds. And that is a huge love of mine. Going to live theater, and same with movies, TV, anything like that that involves acting, good storytelling is something that I'm drawn to. And it's one of the reasons I love doing commentary, as you said, is to be a good commentator, you have to tell a good story.
Yeah.
I think motor racing is one of the sports where storylines are most interesting, because you have so much that goes into it, and there's so much behind the scenes wheeling and dealing to be able to, put all of these cars on the track at the same time, that it makes it really pretty fascinating. And so that inherent ability to be able to bring those stories out, that's where commentary comes alive. Is to be able to tell those stories, say, hey, this is why this is really cool. This is why this isn't just these two drivers on track trying to see who's going to finish first. There's a little bit more to this picture.
Yeah, I mean, last year was quite a busy one for you.
Yeah.
SRO Americas. You also got the opportunity later on in the season to do some pit lane reporting. So it wasn't because, of course, someone else who's linked to DJ is, of course, Joe Peak, who's a previous guest on Commentators Corner, where you've had the opportunity to call on the PA systems. One thing I did find out about DJ is that both he and I have actually been PA commentators for Formula E because you did
Mhm.
New York in 2022. If I remember correctly, wasn't that the weekend when was it Sam Bird that won both races?
Yeah, and that we had a torrential downpour on the Saturday race. Um, and you having done Formula E, I'm not sure what the setup was for you, but I'm basically in a tent in the middle of the track, and so I'm relying off of a street camera and coming down. I think it was into turn 4 or 5 off of the backstretch. They just had one camera showing, oh, we've got a driver off, and it's just raining cats and dogs, and I just saw like 8 cars just miss the turnoff going into the corner, and I'm trying to rattle off who they are as fast as I can. It was crazy. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was able to do Formula E. Really cool experience, really fun. It wasn't a series that I knew all that well, so I had to do a lot of prep to get ready for it.
Mm.
And kind of cool to do the last one in New York. Is now they've made a home base out in Portland.
Yeah, exactly. At Portland Raceway, which has been quite an interesting development. But yeah, I still remember. I think it was Cassidy that went off first in the Virgin,
Hmm.
then Mortara went flying in, and then I think it was like the free, as you said, 8 cars, and there was on the back stretch there was this big standing water puddle, and and folks, when a Formula E car goes through a standing water puddle, and we're talking, this is I think this is pre Gen 3. I think it
Yes.
was it was pre Gen 3, so Gen 2.5. and it still had front and rear brake systems at that point. And yeah, I remember watching that, and I just went, "Holy crap! I hope they're all okay." And
Yeah.
I think it was when, if anyone might remember, the first ever E-Prix in Beijing, where we saw Nico Prost and Nick Heidfeld go to blows. Well, Prost turning in on Heifeld then flipping, and Degrassi becomes the first ever Reprix winner. It was like it was meant to be. I still remember Berlin. And now, folks, bearing in mind, German is my second language. And so I was doing the comms for the circuit in the national language there. And I still remember jumping out of my seat, going full Banzai guns blazing, and I knew some of the people in the app team as well personally, because it was the first season with the Hankook Ion tyres. So they switched from Michelin to Hankook for season 9. We had two different winners, so we had Mitch Evans on the Saturday, Nick Cassidy on the Sunday, and it was an app Cupra lockout. And I remember, yeah, like you had, I was in a porter cabin. So we had the on-site presentation team. They had all their walkie-talkies, all their camera equipment, and there I was. I had one big table, one screen for the world feed, and one for the timing, so the Alcamel
Yep.
timing. And I said to him, "Do we have Wi-Fi here? Because I want to connect my phone and my laptop." Okay, yeah, fine, not a problem at all. So I'd already printed off all the stats and everything that I prepared, and just sort of like words that I felt were really, really needed in that language. So at least I didn't trip over myself. And it was so funny because as part of the sports presentation, they actually did it where one of the on-site presenters would come to the commentary box and knock on the door, and I'd like say, "Hey, come on, come in," And then I got. It was so funny. After that qualifying session on the Sunday, because it was a back-to-back, 2 rounds in a weekend. So I've literally, as I'm about to go in for lunch in the Formula E, tent, I get accosted by about 4 or 5 different spectators who said, "Oh, you're the commentator. Can we get a selfie?" And then I end up being tagged because they found me either on Twitter or on Instagram. And then there's a picture where I've been tagged, and it's got Daniel Kvyat underneath me on the 3 pictures they posted on the story, and I was like, "This is like what the devil's going on?" And then one of my friends who actually works for a dealer group in the UK, one of the brands being Cupra, he sent me the screenshot of when the race had posted their article and then put WTAF question mark exclamation point in the WhatsApp I got. And so I phoned him and I went, "Yes, it actually happened." He went, "You're kidding." I said, "Have you not been watching?" He said, "No, I'm at work. They won't allow us to put the TV onto Formula E." And I said, "Which dealership, which part of the dealership are you in? Are you in Dacia? Are you in Renault? Are you in Cupra?" "Dacia." I went, "Well, there you go then."
Yeah, that's your problem.
They're not going to allow you to do that. And I still remember, I think also because of Berlin being the birthplace of my grandfather on my dad's side, he was born 25 minutes from the Tempelhof area in Charlottenburg. So, like, literally, we were, I think, 15 minutes away from Checkpoint Charlie, from where we were. And then I realised, God, I really wish I'd been able to go to the street where my granddad was actually born. Hopefully, at one point in the future, if I get a chance to have a weekend away to Berlin, I'm going to make a beeline for that. I've got some friends over there anyway. But yeah,
There you
for
go.
and you mentioned very rightly, preparation is
Yeah.
absolutely key to what we do, whether it's sim racing, whether it's IRL. But you've also now got another little. Well, I wouldn't say little. It's quite a big role actually. That you're going to be the new pit lane reporter for Indy NXT, as well as
Mhm.
doing some on-site reporting for IndyCar. Um, just to think, a young man at 6 years of age going to the Brickyard, and then you find that you're going to be on the big support series on the road to IndyCar, and also be involved as part of the paddock. I mean, when you got the call, um, how many times did you have to pinch yourself, DJ?
It was actually funny. I was working PRI with SRO, and we were down in Speedway,
Mm.
walking to Charlie Brown's, a fixture in the Speedway area. And I got an avail check on my phone, and I proceeded to just do a happy dance in the middle of the street. I mean, I was the full on, whooping and hollering and all of that. It is the dream of a lifetime.
Hmm.
Um, to be able to work. I mean, I'm going to be working the Indianapolis 500. Um, On-site reporting, going down to the medical center to make sure everybody's okay, checking in on things, doing that kind of stuff. It is it's weird because it was the goal.
Yeah.
That was the goal, to work a 500 when I really started taking this career seriously in about 2021. When I said this is what I want to be doing. And I was ready for that to be a 5-10 year goal, down the line. I got to really hustle for this, and for it to come this quickly it's a little bit mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did can I just ask? Did Ash Vandley pay witness to your whooping and hollering happy dance at that point?
She did not. She was not there directly. She did not come in until a couple of days later, because I'm pretty sure I would have been all over her social media feed had she seen that.
Bless her. I mean, Ash is. You know what? I mean, I'm really, really pleased to see people like Ash really sort of again break the trend, because there are people like you and I where we have busted our balls to get where we are. And some people have been in the right place at the right time, as you said. 5 to 10 years. Yeah, that was the goal, and it's just like it's like bang, you're into like year three, and you're going to be working along with. I think, in my honest opinion, when it comes to single seater feeder series and also karting in North America, there is only one man who I know you're going to be working with. You're going to have a hoot working with Rob Howden, an
Yeah.
absolute legend, the man that has done the SCUSA Supernats for every single one of the 26 years since its inception. I mean, he's going to be he's a great guy to that loves his motorsport and works tirelessly. I mean, even when it's commentary on karting, whether it's the single seater stuff, even when he's running a business with e-karting news, someone who's that entrenched in the up and comers, the new stars of the future, and for you to now be a part of that in 2024. I mean, you couldn't think of a better person to be working alongside with.
No, not at all. Rob, I've had the chance to interact a little bit with Rob over the years, working at Nashville, Detroit, and Nashville again, and St. Pete the last 2 years, when SRO and Trans Am have crossed paths with Rob. Just an absolutely wonderful guy. And I agree with you. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who knows their stuff back to front, um, and is able to pull that knowledge out effortlessly. That is what always impresses me about Rob,
Mm.
is he is just able to go, oh yeah, he did this back in this, and da 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 da, and run you through exactly what happened. Which blows my mind, because I can't remember a race that I called 2 days ago.
Mm.
That's just how my brain works, is I have to go back and rewatch the race before I get ready for it, to make sure I know what's happening. And Rob can tell you on what lap, what corner this move happened.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's to have that kind of memory recall is impressive. It's like with me when I did the when I went to Le Mans back in 2021. I was working, and this was for the Rotax International Trophy, which is one of the one-off events where you can secure tickets for the Rotax Grand Finals. And I remember getting a phone call from my good friend Henry Baudet, who's also well versed in the world of karting, doing a lot more work over in stateside, because we've just recently had the Rotax Winter Trophy in the second round of the SCUSA Winter Series, which has just come to an end. And he phoned me at 11:30 Tuesday night. He was due to arrive the following day, and said, I can't make it. I was like, and I was really looking forward to, you know, at all places, Lamar, catching up with him, having a French beer on a lovely like terrace, just overlooking some really really wonderful greenery and in the surroundings of Lamar. And he said I can't make it due to personal reasons. So he said I've contacted the organisers and told them that you're already there. And I was like, because when he said I'm not going to be there, I went, cogs has started ticking. I've gone from second to sixth in a snap of a fingers, and I went, oh, here we go. And so I was already there for 3 social media clients. So I had already sort of like started up graphical templates, asking them what they want. With one client, there was a bit of a hoo-ha about the price, but I'm not going to mention names because that wouldn't be right for me to do that. So I end up calling the whole week. From midway through qualifying, Senior Rosax Group 3 had a red flag. It's 10:30 in the morning. I get a phone call from the organizer, Benoit, and he says, where are you? And so at this point, we were still having to do PCR tests for traveling. So
Hmm.
I'd had my PCR test the day before, and then I had to go and pay for it. And he said, don't worry about the PCR test. We'll sort it out. Need you in the commentary box. And so I then did. So I then said to him, okay, well, this turns this day into from half a day to a full day's rate. Not a problem. We just need you there. So I start commentating, and the good thing was I knew 85% of the people in that paddock. I had at that point, I always do this just for rudimentary thoughts. I did have at one point a black hardback notebook which had all my
Hmm.
information of like what have they been doing this year, where have they been competing, which team are they with, what recent results have they had, and some of it, like Rob, I could pull from here. And I did 47 races on my own, plus qualifying. Yes, I kid you not, folks.
Oh,
I keep on telling this story because this is where you really find out if made you're of stern enough stuff to be in this business. So I did
yep.
47 races, including the finals. I did the drive. I did announcing the countries from the drivers' parade. We had a prize draw to do. So someone managed to get a Can-Am Riker, the 3-wheeler, through the prize draw, and ended up being one of the drivers that didn't speak English, from Eastern Europe, from Hungary to be more
Yeah.
precise. Then we did the podiums, and then one of the senior drivers went, "I'm going to get you." Like I was waiting for someone to hit me with a champagne. It was going to happen. And one of the things that I like to do when there is champagne involved is to do the old running commentary. So the guy who won the juniors, Kai Rillatz, was the last one to pop his champagne cork on the podium, and I'd already prepped for this. So I was in my staff t-shirt, had my ACO radio on the back of my belt, on my shorts. So I had cargo shorts, trainers. Nothing else was in there. No cell phone, no keys, no wallet, nothing. I'd already prepared for this, and I went, something's going to happen here. Someone's going to get me, and I know it's going to happen at any minute. So I basically said, "Oh, Kai Ridditz can win the final and get the ticket to the grand finals this year, but he can't pop a cork quick enough." And as I've said that, he's popped the cork. He's comes running straight at me. I've gone like this. So I've turned my back to him. He's sprayed me right up the back. I think I heard a little bit of a electrical problem with the ACO radio, which got handed back
Yeah.
rather sticky. And I went, "That's not my fault." I said, "Go and build the bloke that's won this junior road tax final." And then it's quite funny when you can say to a driver, "Well, you realise I'm a bit like an elephant here as a commentator. I never forget." Who
Yep.
was told off by the race director for initialising 2 full starts on the final? Ah, you, sir. So like literally, and his mum was bent over double, laughing, beetroot red. And it's so good when we as commentators, like you said, it's about these stories.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things we do need to talk about is the big difference between doing when you're doing the actual commentary for, like, say, the GT World YouTube channel, which is where SRO Americas is on there, like, say, TC America, GT Americas, GT4s, which I absolutely love, and then there's
Oh, it's great.
all the other stuff there. I've already asked Joe this question, but in terms of preparation for when you're doing the actual broadcast for SRO, as opposed to doing the PA, what are the biggest differences in terms of preparation, or is it still very much the same?
In terms of preparation, I would say it's the same.
Hmm.
You want to come in with the same background knowledge on everybody in the field, regardless of whether you're doing, and for me, when I'm up doing GR Cup, which is on GT World YouTube, or when I'm just on the PA, that research is all the same. What changes is a little bit of the expectation on the viewer.
Hmm.
Because when I'm doing PA, I'm cognitive that unless I'm at a track really like Sonoma, um, you're not going to be able to see everything.
Yeah.
Sonoma, you can see about 75% of the track. It's one of the most beautiful tracks to go to. I highly recommend it. Um, but you kind of have to walk the audience through what they're seeing a little bit more. Use corner numbers, use corner names a little bit more, be a little bit more, I don't want to say flowery, but descriptive with what you're talking about. Paint that word picture. When you're on TV, unless you're a nut job like me who just puts on racing in the background when he's like working, which is what I'll do. I'll just throw on I'll throw on an endurance race while I've got stuff to do, and that's my background noise.
Yeah.
You're actively watching the race, so it can be assumed that you are seeing what the audience is seeing, and that's going to change the way you talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd really agree with that because, like, having done a lot of circuit commentary when it comes to karting, I also did Dunnington Park with the BRSCC catering weekends where we had caterums. Unfortunately, Sir Chris Hoy, who was at that time, this was just before COVID, I think it was 2019. The CEO of Caterham Cars actually was in Sir Chris Hoy's car for that weekend. I was gutted because I was like thinking, oh damn, because I was going down to the pit lane at Donington Park and interviewing some of the. So myself and Scott, we would Scott Woodwiss, we would take turns of going down to the pit lane and speaking to some of the drivers. I was like thinking, oh god, if only so Chris Hoy was here and he got on the podium, I would love to have had a chat with him. And
Yeah,
but then as you say, when it's like say doing a live stream, you've really you're describing a lot in terms of the mechanical side of the
hmm
sport as well. But you're doing it in a way where, they're not going to know what a torsion bar is or an upright so we have to give the layman's terms variation, like say with regards to KZ2, where it's a 6 speed shifter class. So as soon as you say 6 speed, it's a manual gearbox.
hmm
And then I always say to him, okay, these carts can top out at probably about 160 kilometers an hour, which is around about 100 miles an hour. And I said they're pretty equivalent to a 911 Carrera on going from 0 to 100, so around 3.5 seconds. So straight away, as soon as you associate it with something else that everyone can go, yes, now I know what he's talking about. It's like with um, when we have particular sayings to describe something, like say for instance, David Addison, who said he's off. That person's off like a stabbed rat, like someone's gotten away into the distance. If you do that kind of thing in Europe, the first thing that and I found this out quite early in my European karting commentary career. It was 2019. It was the first round of the Rotax Euro Trophy at Karting Genk. And I always like to, if someone had scarpered away into the distance, I would say, well, he's away quicker than a rat up a drain pipe. So it was that kind of vernacular. And they go, what does that mean? I went, well, you were 1.5 seconds around, you were 1.5 seconds faster than anybody else. You stormed away from pole. So I then changed it to my most recent Freudian saying when it comes to that is like, well, it's a bit like Sebastian Vettel back in his Red Bull days trying to get out of the DRS zone. So straight away, there
Yep,
are always ways in which we can explain it to add a little bit of our own colourful sort of sense of humour, DJ, don't we?
very much so. And I have my friends that have heard me call many a race that they say The longer I get into a race weekend, the more my Hoosier comes out,
Ah,
because
true.
the explanations that I'll start to give get a little bit more off kilter and a little bit more folksy. And I end up on the podium and I'm like, give a big old hoot and a holler, and people are like, what?
Oh man, yeah, exactly, exactly. It's just like that inner passionate child, just
Oh
sort of
yeah.
like coming out. I mean, like last season when you had that opportunity to do, the pit lane reporting for SRO Americas. That's also, rather than being in the booth, you're in pit road and you're sort of like thinking, right, okay, now this is something completely different. Um, you know, speaking with the comms team, with the production team, running up and down the pit lane. I hate to think what your step count was at that point.
60 kilometers.
60. Oh,
60 kilometers over one weekend.
man, I bet your feet liked you after that.
Oh, they were very sore. I think I came home and sat for about a week and a half.
That's also one of the things that I think a lot of people don't always take into account because they go, oh yeah, you're talking about race cars, you're talking about racing, you're doing what you love. As we all know, when you're working doing what you love, it feels like you're never working a day in your life. But as soon as you get away from that weekend where you've been up from like say 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, early breakfast, depending on where you're staying, folks, is also another thing. If you're within half an hour of the track, that's fine. But then it's a case of okay, right, conversation about what's happening in the morning. Okay, when are we going live? Sound checks is also another thing. There's so much, and then there's also like trying to. Do you sometimes find, DJ, that even though you're tired as heck on, like, say, the first day when there's been like qualifying and there's been like a race one, do you find yourself sometimes being up until like a god awfully early hour, and then finding you've had 3 hours sleep, and then you need to get some source of energy, and it normally ends up being in a can, carbonated, with a big hit of caffeine, and then you're running in there like, how much sleep did you get last night? It's like 3 hours. What were you doing? Looking at what was going on yesterday, so I can remember it for today. It is always that the preparation is not just the before the event, it's during the event and trying
Yep.
to sometimes recall what has transpired. And if you can't remember it, the first thing you're going to do is look over the footage. Unfortunately for me, when it's karting and I have a 6.5 hours live stream to look through, I'm like thinking, no, okay, right, I'll just make sure that I get the results printed off so I can remember what happened.
No, I mean, you're very, very right. And I'd like to take this time to officially thank the official energy drink supplier of SRO Motorsports Group America, eBoost, which I'm happy to say is now sold at CVS Pharmacy, and I've gotten my girlfriend addicted to it, which you're welcome. Um, I have, and it's when we found it and I brought it home, and she's like, "Oh, this is really great." I texted all of my SRO friends, and they all thought that was the funniest thing in the world. But anyway, but yeah, whether you're going back watching the highlights of the race, whether you're making notes about the race, or
Mm,
frankly, the other thing to remember is you're lucky enough not only to be, at least in my position, I work with a couple of series in particular, so it's a family.
mm,
And that to me is the thing that, yes, this is racing. This is what I love more than anything in the world. But to kind of tie everything together, whether it was when I was doing music and doing show choir back in high school, whether I was doing theater in college, my writing cohort, when I was getting my master's degree, it's a small group of people attempting to do something, will argue, vaguely artistic in the
mm,
world of racing, putting on the pomp and circumstance and all of that goes in behind the scenes of putting on a motor race, in trying to achieve the impossible,
mm.
trying to achieve a perfect race weekend, which is something that can never be done ever.
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean you're going to fight that much harder to get it better the next time. And so for me, sometimes I'm up until 3 or 4 in the morning, not necessarily doing work, but because I'm with my friends and we're not drinking and falling over and that kind of thing. We're in somebody's hotel room telling stories and making each other cry laughing. And
Mm.
we look at our watch and go, we got to go to bed.
Yeah, we're gonna be up in 3 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, it. I think I always find that sometimes, as much as it being part of a family, there are sometimes when you do find, and I'll be completely honest here, is there are times when you do need to have that clean break from everybody, even if it's for like a couple of hours before you go to bed.
Mhm.
And I always find that happens because um, on a Saturday, on a karting weekend, just like the one that I've just done, I had we had warm up in the morning. So I was so in terms of in comparison with, let's say, an SRO Americas broadcast, you've got the production truck, you've got all the team behind the scenes, you've got the camera people, everyone's in position. For karting, it's very different. Yes, we do have a pretty good setup, but it's not on the level where you've got like about 25 different screens in the production truck. You've got multiple different camera operators, multiple different producers, whether it be audio or broadcast or whatever. We have one producer, one director. The producer's normally me on the karting streams because, like, I'll sort out graphics for all the thumbnails for all the races that we actually record, and we record them live as they happen, so they're uploaded later. And then I'll then have to do social media posts because for one of the championships, I'm not only the commentator, I produce the live, help to produce the live stream, but I'm also the social media manager. So I have to try and give people an update on what's going on. And then there'll be times when the first thing that I want to do on a Saturday, like I'll get to the track at like 7:45 in the morning, and I will leave about 13 to 14 hours later, depending on how long the race day has been. When you're waiting for the stewards to go through race decisions, get the drivers up there, give them slaps on the wrist or give them post race penalties for the next race or whatever, there'll be times when I just want to go. As much as I love being with the family, I need a little bit of me time. And even though you get that on a lot of the traveling, and we'll get onto traveling in just a second, DJ, anyway. But there are times when you just need that hour or couple of hours to sort of calm down the adrenaline spike, uh, and just sort of go, okay, right, tomorrow's the big day. It's the final race day of the weekend. Let's just chill out and get some music to calm us, calm down, go to sleep, whatever. It is really about the fact that it's a big family unit, and there are so many times when you've taken the piss out of other people, and especially when you talk to them, say, "Do you remember when you did this on camera?" And then and there will always be that one person in the group that does the screen recording on their smartphone and
Yep.
then shows everybody, and then that person is the butt of the joke.
Yep. Oh, 100%. I mean, there have been many, many things that I have said on air that I have, whether it is in the moment,
Hmm.
thankfully, a lot of the things that I say over the PA are not recorded. But there are plenty of times that I have had, those moments. My dear friend, Kyle Heyer, who is the best booth partner I could ever ask for, he has my all-time favorite one of those, which is we were up in the booth at VIR, and he was trying to think of the word thesaurus, which searching for that word in and of itself is irony.
Hmm.
And then he was like, "You need to just have a synonym book." And I just looked at him dead in the eye, and I went, "Do you mean thesaurus?" And he went, "Yeah, I do." And he lost me for 2 minutes because I just died laughing. But to your original point, yeah, you're gonna have those moments where you're absolutely giving each other hell. And for me, that moment that I need to be by myself, it's going to the booth.
Hmm.
It's I need to have that moment in the morning.
Yeah.
Whether it's the drive over there, whether it's okay, got to get myself psyched up and into the moment. I just need that 10-minute window where I can put on my headphones, zone everything out. Okay, let's go. And then the flip side of that is I agree with you. There are nights that I want to go out and I want to be that. And then there are nights, and I love the people that, then this is how you know they're family. When you can turn to them and say, I love you, I just need a night in, or I'm
Mm.
not going to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, it's. I think that happens on a more regular basis now because of the fact that I can't believe I'm saying this again, that I'm pushing 50 on in 2027. Like, there's still that youthful, exuberant child inside me
Oh,
when
yeah.
I'm on the mic and I hit the unmute button and I'm like, "Good morning, here we are." Da 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 da. Go through the spiel, and then as soon as I've muted myself at the end of the day, and then I just go and relax. Just like
Yep.
literally, and then someone will knock on the door and I say, "Give me a minute." Like literally, you just want to have that 5 to 10 minute calm down sort of like, um, where you just want to sort of like zone back into feeling normal again.
Yeah.
But then of
Take
course,
off the performance face.
exactly, because there's actually one topic that I haven't really covered with anybody first, but I thought I'd ask you the question. Do you sometimes feel that you get the and this is a saying that has been bandied about, imposter syndrome at times?
Oh, like you wouldn't believe, man. Like you wouldn't believe. Um, and it's not anything logical.
Mm,
It's not I have a bad broadcast and therefore my night is ruined and I'm a terrible commentator. Um, I get that imposter syndrome just walking around. I
mm,
mean, it is a huge thing that I have to fight against. Um, and I have been fortunate enough in my life that, through therapy and all of that kind of thing, that I have learned be vocal,
yeah.
talk about it. And so I will voice it. I will say, like, this is what I'm going through right now. And I am so very blessed that I have so many people in my life
Mm,
that when I get those moments of imposter syndrome, I vocalize it. And they are there to proverbially beat the crap out of me.
mm,
Um, because it doesn't matter if I'm calling IndyCar, it doesn't matter if I'm uh doing a sim racing broadcast in a league with 8 people. I can get that imposter syndrome no matter where I am. And for me, it is I have to remember what I've done, where I am, how I'm doing it, the way I've done it. And I've got to have those people around me to go, "You're an idiot, be quiet." And that's how I combat it because it is a very real thing.
but I think also with that having as you said, yeah, for people to proverbially beat the crap out of you, but
Yeah.
in that way, it is a support network. But there are also times
Yeah.
like when you say like, "Oh God, I'm really having a shit day," and then and the first thing, as soon as somebody says, "Do you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it over a coffee, or let's talk about it over a phone call, or whatever." Because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, folks. If you suffer with any mental health problems, imposter syndrome, like myself and DJ have just done, if you need to pick up the phone or WhatsApp somebody, iMessage somebody, it doesn't matter what time of day or night it is. Just do it. I mean, like there's so many people these days that don't vocalize it, and I've been one where I think before I got into this business full time, and a lot of people were like saying, "Why are you burning the candle at both ends?" So I was working in the auto industry for 2 decades,
Mhm.
and I was working for a major automotive services provider, MSX International, based out of Motor City, Detroit. And we had a base here in the UK, like literally 20 minutes from where I live. And I was working there, and I was also doing the motorsport. So every single bit of holiday was going towards like taking a Friday and taking a Monday off because I'd have to fly out on a Monday to, let's say, Germany, have 2.5 days in the booth, plus social media, then come back home on the Monday, and then go back into work on the Tuesday, you know, there are always those times whereby if you need to, if you say, I'm okay, it's okay to not be okay, folks. We are in a day and age where mental health is so frequently talked about that it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what business you're in, whether it's motorsport, it could be anything from being on Wall Street. It doesn't matter. If you have an issue that you want to talk to somebody about, don't let it fester. Just don't let it hang on your chest, because it'll feel like a chip on your shoulder. And the next thing you know, someone becomes a statistic, which we don't want happening.
Not at all.
Right. One of the things that is a bane of our existence, DJ, and thank you very much for being completely honest and openly answering that question. Travel. Travel is one of those things where people go, "Oh, you go to all these nice places. You get to travel all over the United States, or in my case, you get to travel to the UA, to the Emirates or to the Arabic-speaking nations." Travel is great when you're going on holiday, but
Mm-hmm.
when you're traveling for work, that's completely different, isn't it? Hey.
There is a very particular mood I get into when I get into an airport.
Oh yes.
And that is, I don't hate the human race. I just hate every member of it. I become the most nihilistic person in the world when I have to walk through an airport or walk through airport security. And the flip of that is I love the travel.
Mm-hmm.
I love getting up into a plane. I love the fact that I can just go, doop, Wi-Fi off. Nobody can talk to me for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I love being up in the plane. I love all of that. I'm one of those people that, I'm very, very specific to an airline, and I'm obsessed with my status level and all of that. I'm one of those guys, all of that kind of thing. I love it. I love it. I love it. But when I am in an airport, when I am boarding a plane, when I am going through airport security, I just hate everyone.
I think one of the things that I hate about travel is when I get to an airport and like how, as you said, the preparation is not just the race weekend. It's also making sure that you got all your documents. I mean, I'll show
Yep.
you folks that I've got information for my next gig, which also includes my flight details. Yep, there we go.
Yep. I haven't had to make it up since Indy
No.
last year, but very specific. I've got my entry list,
Yep.
track map, schedule,
Yep. Exactly.
ad reads,
Yep.
championship standings.
Exactly. And at least
Yep.
at least at the beginning of the year, DJ, we don't have to worry about championship standings until the next weekend comes around. But
Well,
what?
but the flip of that is you got to bring in last year's championship standings so
True.
you know how to talk about it in terms of where they are and how they're doing, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing.
I think one of the things I hate about airports, and it's not to do with hating people in general, it's hating the fact that people who don't fly as regularly as you or I or anybody else does, is the fact that they are completely bloody unprepared. So, like, literally, already for my flights, boarding cards are already on my phone.
Yep.
I've also got it printed off just in case the boarding card on my phone doesn't work. I know exactly what I got to do. I always go fast track. 100%. Every time I get a chance to do it, I always go fast track, because then you are through security in about 15 minutes flat, as long as you don't get the beep beep, the dreaded beep of doom when you go through the security check, which actually happened to be on my first gig of the season. But I think there was one particular instance where I nearly lost my mind. So I was travelling from Heathrow Terminal 5 to Brussels Zaventem Airport. And I'd gotten to the car park, got on the park and ride, got to the terminal, and I was just like thinking, okay, I've got 2 hours until the flight takes off. So I've got an hour and a half to get check my baggage, go through security, maybe get something to eat, get somewhere to sit down, wait for the gate number to come up, check the app on a regular basis. I was flying with British Airways. And this was during COVID-19. So everyone had masks on. Everyone had, well, I had everything. So I had boarding pass, passenger locator form, COVID-19 negative test, passport, uh, authorization letter from the RACB, the Royal Automobile Club of Belgium, to be at the event. Also, a letter saying that I am needed there by the Rotax Euro Trophy, as I was the official commentator. And then I get to check in. I get to baggage check in, folks. There's a queue of about 10 people in front of me. Every single person has been asked by one of the people that checks everybody's information before they go through to baggage check-in. Not one of them had any idea of what they needed to do. Some of them hadn't filled out the passenger locator form. Some had forgotten to print off the COVID-19 test results. And it was like, time's ticking away. And I'm like thinking, okay, I've now got an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it whittled it down. I got to the boarding gate on final call for that flight. And I was just at that point where I was just about to. I felt like there's some inanimate object that's going to be thrown through a glass window in a minute if this shit doesn't hurry up. And that was back then. But now that we're not, some people do still take the precaution of wearing a face mask on airplanes, which is completely understandable. It's people's choice if they want to do it.
Exactly.
But one of the things I like about getting on an airplane, right? Are you an aisle seat or a window seat person?
I'm a window guy, and a window left side.
I'm
It's the only way I can do it.
I'm ambidextrous. It's left or right side, but I managed to quite recently. Like when if it's an hour flight or a 4-hour flight, one of the things that I found that works to my advantage is to have a set of headphones that clip in, and I finally managed to get some hook around the ear ones, like the earbuds that go in. So at least I had a problem with the previous set. Well, I accidentally dropped the previous set and one of the earbuds decided not to work, but they had a problem with falling out. So like literally if you've gone like, oh, this is comfortable, and then all of a sudden you've fallen asleep, the left earbud used to go out and end up underneath the seat.
Been there. Been there, done that.
So, but I think, yeah, if it's a window seat, for me, it doesn't matter whether it's left side or right side. As long as it's a window seat, I'm absolutely golden. What would you say have been your highlights of what happened last year with SRO Americas? I mean, apart from being able to be in the pit lane and later in the season, but also for those wondering, well, if you ask DJ what his favourite track is, well, we've already been talking about that at great length. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but
It's on my water bottle.
Yeah. I sort of like wondered. I was like thinking that looks familiar. But what would you say have been some of the highlights of the 2023 season for you personally? Whether it's been on or off track.
For 2023, I think you've got to start with the Toyota GR Cup North America. The implementation of it being selected to be ostensibly the voice of it. And the amazing battles that we had. I mean, I think back to Road America and Gresham Wagner and Tyler Gonzalez, banging doors for the better part of 2 laps. Their VIR in particular were really special. They were just fun races to be able to call. And getting to know that paddock, I think, was a highlight. These are a lot of young drivers that have a very bright and promising career. And, kind of as you were saying of looking over these feeder series and going, oh, okay, they're going somewhere.
Mm.
that was a huge highlight. I think for me, um, the rise late season of Samantha Tan Racing and Fanatec GT World Challenge America um, was really cool to see. I adore Sam and her team. I love what she has been able to do. And I think, she's kind of one of those people that you just want to cheer for.
Yeah.
And to see them, kind of start the season nowhere. I mean, they looked like they were floundering. Um, and we saw a little bit at New Orleans. We saw a little bit over the time, and then at Road America to see them come alive and get that podium with her and Neil was really, really special. Um, I think for me, just getting to share in some of the excitement of drivers and team members that I've gotten to know over the years. Whether it was Kenton Cook and Kevin Bohm joining up with Random Vandals and Pirelli GT4 America and seeing them challenge for a title.
Mm.
Kenton pulling double duty at VIR and sweeping the pro class category in Fanatec GT World Challenge America with Daniel Morad was awesome. Um, Being able to see Christian Pericarpi and Clay Williams for the mini team be able to kind of deliver on the promise of last year. Don't tell anyone. I'm biased. I own a mini.
Hey,
So
I look. You know what? I owned what was it? 2002 Mini One. This is when
yeah.
BMW still had the arrangement with Chrysler for the 1.6 liter Pentagon engines.
Okay.
Back in the, we're talking like early
Yeah.
minis. I even had a my first car. Funny enough, was a 1986 red Mini Chelsea with those
There you go.
ungainly mini moke uh, charcoal black bull bars on the front and rear, which promptly got taken off because it spoiled the look of all the chrome that it had on it as well. But it
There you
was
go.
so yeah. No, I completely understand the biased nature there with regards to Mini. But I mean,
Yeah.
the Mini Cooper's been part of the TC Americas grid for
Yeah.
for so many years, and it's still incredibly competitive in that championship. And
It is.
I completely understand that.
And it's one of those things of I'll go up to them and, joke and they're like, we'll put you in. And I'm like, you don't want me to do that. But, those have been highlights. I think, it's always a highlight to be able to call a race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Mhm.
No matter how you slice it, that is special. Um, to be able to be a part of Trans Am last year, which I'm having an expanded role. I'm doing about 5 races with them this year as opposed to the 2 that I did last year. To be able to be part of the Detroit Grand Prix for the first time in 20, 30 years, moving it back downtown. That was really cool. That was really special. Um, my first double duty weekend at Nashville when I was working with Trans Am and working with SRO, running around like a crazy man, literally switching hats, switching shirts. Each
Mhm.
time I would, go this way and that way was super fun. Um, and truthfully, just the people that I got to meet along the way, young drivers, old drivers, all of those folks that I got to hear and be a part of and see the rise of something that I am very, very passionate about, which is women in motorsports.
Mhm.
Um, there, I am lucky enough to be able to represent SRO and to be able to be a member of an organization that champions women in the way that they do. And whether it was Mia Lovell or Tony Breidinger in the GR Cup series, or watching Samantha, as we said, Ashton Harrison getting her silver license, competing up at the top, or watching Fast Tracks Racing's Maddie Oust and her just ascendancy at VIR.
Mhm.
That was one of my favorite moments. That Maddie had been up there, but hadn't really looked like we hadn't seen the killer instinct yet. And at VIR, it was a coming out party, and she was just on fire. And all of us are walking around the paddock going, "Did you see what Maddie did? This is awesome!" And seeing everybody get excited about it, that was really, really cool.
I think also that's very much echoed with what we have over here in Europe. Of course, part of the Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Crew, is Gemma Scott, who I know.
Hmm.
Is also co-director of the Loudspeaker Agency, which I just so happen to be on their books for as well. But then you look at the trio at the Iron Dames: Gatting,
Yeah,
Bovey, and Fry. I mean,
yeah,
you then look at so many people. I mean, funny enough, there's a woman who actually is originally from the UK, about 30 minutes from where I live. Her original home base is Ipswich in Suffolk, and she's qualified for the Indianapolis 500 multiple times. I am, of course, talking about Pippa Mann. And then you got
Oh, you're talking about Pippa.
Pippa, yeah,
I thought you were gonna say Catherine.
well, I was gonna. Well, Catherine Legg, who is also who's had the most Rolex 24 at Daytona race
Yep.
starts, 13. Tatiana Calderon's done a couple now.
Yep.
I remember her being over here in Europe running with Muka Motorsport in the FIA
Hmm.
Formula 3 European Championship alongside current F1 drivers Max Verstappen and Esteban Ocon. And that was the year
There you go.
When Esteban won the title, and halfway through the
Yep.
season, Max went from black and orange Van Amersfoort colours to the colours of Red Bull, and he's been there ever since. Um, I think also we need to get onto sim racing because we haven't really talked
Yeah.
much about that, haven't we? Um, how did you get your start in sim racing commentary, DJ?
Um. Uh, Basically, I had. So it starts with me getting into sim racing as a whole, which
Hmm.
was in 2018, 2019. I was working for a unscripted production company
Yeah.
and trying to come up with ideas and pitch ideas. And I had this idea of Beat the Pro.
Hmm.
You get 10 people into a room, you put them on simulators, they get coached by Dale Earnhardt Jr. and James Hinchcliffe, and you do a race, and then it's a one-on-one between them and Earnhardt. And if you beat them, you win $1 million. That's the idea. That's how I got introduced to the world of sim racing and through iRacing in particular. Flash forward 2019, I had a little bit of money lying around. I was like, I want to do this. Um, Started doing sim racing and really started watching the Lionheart series.
Hmm.
Named obviously for Dan Weldon, but it's we can say it again, an IndyCar series on iRacing.
Yes.
And I
Finally.
really finally I really got involved in that. Well, the pandemic hit. There was no racing going on. I started watching more and more and more of Lionheart. Um, and then I saw a post on Reddit, of all places, of somebody said, "How do you become a sim racing commentator?" And they said, "Just email the companies." So I reached out to a few people, and luckily enough, my email found the inbox of Joe Peak.
Hmm.
Joe and I jumped on a call that night and spent about 30 to 40 minutes chatting with each other, 30 of which was reminiscing about old school IndyCar and Champ Car, and comparing notes about where we were at certain races and that kind of stuff. Um, they put me in the booth and I took off. Um, and that was all she wrote.
And now you also, apart from GSRC, we've had the pleasure of now working with each other on the driving club by Road Atlanta Winter iRacing League. We've well at this point, this is when we're recording this. I mean, this is going to go out a lot later because there are so many episodes. But we did Daytona with the GTPs, even though we had an eight
Mhm.
car grid for two
Made it
races.
interesting.
It was interesting. We had racing under floodlights. We had racing under overcast, windy conditions. But yeah, it's. But then, of course, you've done race spot as well,
Hmm.
quite a lot. You've also been part of the team at SRO Esports,
Hmm.
which was very much instigated through SRO. I think one of the things that I like about what SRO have decided to do was with the GT Pro Series over in the with the Endurance Cup over in
Hmm.
Europe, for the actual pros to compete on same equipment running in the cars that they would normally run in the Endurance Cup, and not only there being prize money but also points for the championship up for grabs. It really just goes to show that apart from championing women in motorsport, they're looking outside the box when it comes to let's bring something different to the party. And I remember standing at the back of the Fanatec Arena with George Morgan, Paul Jeffrey, Ash Vanderlei, Luke Whitehead, Rory Alexander, and this was at the CrowdStrike 24 Hours at Spa last year. And so there was Lewis McGlade, Cam Roger. They were like all of us watching at the back, and I was just like, "Oh!" Like we were like going, "Oh, how you doing?" Like it's like it was like this sim racing conglomerate had just launched itself into the paddock at, at the Fanatec Arena. It was
Well,
just
it's one of the coolest things about working in sim racing is you feel like you get to know these people pretty well.
yeah,
You have to, I would actually argue, know them better on a sim racing broadcast than you would if you were working in real life
yeah.
because you have to pick up on nonverbal cues. So you memorize their speech pattern. You know how they think. You've got to be thinking that ahead. And so when you meet in real life for the first time, you're like, yeah, I've known this guy for like 5 years. Like, oh, yeah, we're best friends. It's great.
And I mean, and then you look at them, and you go like, I didn't know what I was going to expect when I saw you for the first
Oh,
time. Even
that too.
yeah, it's sort of like I was just like thinking, oh my god, like whoa. And then I realised Lewis McGlade's hair is really as wayward as it actually is, folks, unless he has a trim. You've got to thank ESLR1 and Wrenchball for that one. Um, but yeah, it is really really weird, and it's I think also it's like I think one of the other things about the sim racing community is that there are so many great individuals that I think really make up a big part of it, whereby you've got people that like say James Baldwin, Merck Esports official works driver. You look at the people who are alongside him. Graham Carroll, Bono House, Jarno Otmir, Jarno, who has decided to jump into KZ2 for the first time in about 9 years, and met the guy in person. Of course, also someone that we know through Williams Esports, Arthur LeHouk, who's also
Mhm.
there at Genk that same weekend, also running on CRG machinery, which is really, really crazy. But I've got one final question for you, DJ, and it's one that I
All
don't
right.
ask people very often. So you've got, so if you had no budget cap, no limit, like no glass ceiling, and you could pick a road car and a race car to drive, but you've got to pick two different locations for each one. So a different location for each one. So whether it's a bit of road or a racetrack, what would you go for? Take your time because it's one that always gets people's cogs twirling, and I can see that with you right now.
Mhm. I think I can answer one very, very easily.
Right?
Um, I do I have any? I don't have any of my like Bond memorabilia up, but I am a huge James Bond fan. I
Okay.
have loved James Bond since I was a kid. Driving a DB5,
Oh.
which I know isn't actually that great of a car, like by it's the movie that made it famous. It wasn't actually the performance of it. I get that. I
Mm.
understand that. But I want to drive an Aston Martin DB5 and just along the French Riviera into Monaco, that is just poetry to me.
Okay. That's you know what? That is you're the first one to mention Aston Martin and something as iconic as the DB5 that was in Goldfinger, Thunderball,
Yep.
GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, Casino Royale, Skyfall, Spectre, and of course the last appearance of Daniel Craig as James Bond, No Time to Die.
I refuse to accept that as a Bond movie.
I
But
know
that's neither here nor there.
that's neither here nor there, but that those are all the
Yes.
movies that the DB5 has made an appearance.
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of a car, and a race car on a racetrack.
Yeah. This
I'm
is
so torn. I'm so torn because there's the European idolization answer that I want to give, and then there's the American answer that I
go for
want
both.
to
Go
give.
for both, buddy. Go for both.
All right, all right. The American answer, Gordon John Cox 1982 Wildcat, the STP livery, the second, maybe third at this point, closest finish in Indianapolis 500 history back in 1982. To drive that thing around IMS would be incredible.
Okay.
And then my other answer, my European answer, would probably be to drive the Lotus 49 around Brands Hatch.
Oh, that's actually a brilliant. Both those are brilliant. Now there is a flip side to this, folks. I'm going to try and provide not necessarily like for like equivalents, say like looking at the same era, but maybe more of a modern touch on them. So you say, but I'm actually gonna do something different here. I'm gonna go a little bit off script. So I'm going to say I'm going to do the race cars first
All right.
because there's going to be a little bit of uh, synthesis between what DJ has said with the road car. So the Americanized side of me would be going up Pikes Peak in the Audi S1 Quattro with the one that was driven by the legend that is Michel Mouton.
Yeah.
So that is the Americanized side of it because she actually won the event that year, if I remember
She
correctly,
did.
as well. And
Also, I will tell you, I have driven up Pikes Peak. I have driven up Pikes Peak at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I have driven up Pikes Peak at 2 in the morning in pea soup fog. Anyone who willingly races up that thing is A, insane, B, a hero.
exactly. So that's the I wanted to do. I wanted to go. I was looking at it. Okay, what cars have made an impact? Of course, there was the recent attempt with the BMW XM that went
Mhm.
up Pikes Peak and set a record for because obviously the legend that is Mr. Reese Millen was involved as part of the project. Let's not forget. And on the actual race day, it didn't go quite to plan. The car that was originally used was written off big time.
Yep.
So that's the American version. The European version would be the McLaren that took James Hunt to his one and only Formula One world title. And the only place, you said the Lotus 49 at Brands Hatch, I'm saying the McLaren from James Hunt round Silverstone.
Yep.
And now we get to the third bit of the equation. You said the Aston Martin DB5 along the French Riviera. I'm going to say Aston Martin,
Okay.
but I'm going to say a particular Aston Martin which was produced about 30 plus years later. Now, there is a new version of this car that has just been released at this point as us recording this podcast. It is the 1989 Aston Martin V600 Le Mans edition. Now, at that point, the Vantage had 300 brake horsepower. Well, an Aston Martin with that type of engine, with only a single supercharger on it, had around 300 horsepower. Aston Martin's Skunks Work division. It wasn't called Q division back then, like it is now. They bolted on
Still the best branding they've ever
exactly
done.
Q division. Perfect personification. They bolted another supercharger on it, and the first edition came out with 550 horsepower. The last 50 that they made, they brought out the V600, and it was the Le Mans edition, I think limited to 50 units. 600 horsepower from a twin supercharged V8. And the funny thing was, Aston Martin has been known for producing these absolutely wonderful front grills, which have been synonymous with the brand, have occasionally found themselves onto Ford products, Mondeo, uh,
I
back
was
in the day.
thinking it.
Yeah,
You said it.
I
was
said it.
thinking
I said it. Yeah, because of the fact it didn't belong on the Ford Mondeo.
No, it did not.
But the difference with the Vantage V600 Le Mans edition was that instead of the traditional grille, there was a little bit. It looked like it was two nostrils of a pig's snout, which helped to actually force the air in. So it didn't have a traditional like proper Aston Martin grille with the wide open, wire mesh behind it. So it was color coded and had the two little snouty inlets. And that car, I'd actually now this is where it gets a bit weird, folks. I'd actually like to drive that car down Route 66 and make a road trip out of it.
That's how I got to California. I took a 2010 Ford Focus, and I left my parents' home in Indiana. I drove up to Chicago, the extra 2 hours out of the way, and I drove the entirety of Route 66 to get out to California.
And on that bombshell, DJ Clark, thank you very much for being our guest on episode 57, buddy.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been an absolute pleasure.
So, folks, if you want to follow DJ, I will give you his Twitter Twitter, X, whatever the hell anyone wants to call it now. Elon Musk, it's all your fault. Twitter and Instagram links for DJ are down in the description below. Obviously, I will also put in there the link for the GSRC YouTube channel, GT World YouTube channel, Race Spot. I could start putting a plethora down in there, but folks, a big thank you to everyone that always watches every single one of these video episodes on the podcast here on the YouTube channel. We also do have an audio version available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Downforce Radio, the nation's motorsport station. So as always, if in doubt, flat out, we'll see you very soon for episode 58. Goodbye.